I wonder, I got to share the screen now. Wait a minute. See whether you can see my screen. Yeah, before this, I want to let you all know that we're going to have this mock test. Did you receive the email tonight? Please have no, I have sent this email. Okay, good. And you can go to the detail, check about the announcement of the second one. But how we going to have this instructions? For instructions here, if you click, you can find the detail, how the guideline would be. This is details of that. Okay. So I hope you're going to understand the whole process. If you still have some concern, you can raise it in the time when we have this mock test. And now, let's try to go through this together. Let's start from the very lecture one. Lecture one, we have introduced the fundamentals of housing economics. I hope you would understand. Oh, by the way, I would like to let you know about the format or the kind of formatting of that. We don't have two parts of the examination, section A and section B. Each part's got the three questions, and you can pick, you have to pick one from the 6 questions. Although we have 6 classified in section A and section B. So you can get one question from section A and get another question from section B. Feel free to check, but you cannot choose 2 from one sections. I hope that this would make sense to you. Do we still need the lockdown browser if this is open book? I have to say, let's try to follow the stuff and the regulations from the universities. So for me, that I think better if you try to follow the regulations. Okay. For your question in specific, I'm going to seek for the the program leader and see what he would comment if open book and closed book. So I can make an announcement later. Okay, for your question. Thank you. So you can think about the further question while we are doing this revision. Don't worry. So let's start from the lecture 1. As you would see from the first lecture lines, you can say that we generally introduce what are the economics and finance, what are the fundamental principles of economics, and how to study economics efficiently, etc. So, and also the arrangement for the tutorials and the assignments. So all of this are become important, rationales for the economic rules. So the 10 principles that we can go through this together. Scarcity, the conditions of scarcity, and about the 10 rules of that Okay, so I hope that you're going to follow me with that. But for finance, it's quite easy. It's how to evaluate, how to arrange, allocate, and use the monetary resources. For open book, actually, let me try to respond briefly. Open book means you're gonna to choose to print the lecture notes and lecture slides as you know you could have. Okay, there are, I think, 2 lecture notes has not been uploaded because some of the guest lectures I cannot guarantee from guest lectures, but from mine, there's still 1 or 2 is missing. I'm gonna to upload very soon. Don't worry for that. So you can print them out. Real versus financial assessment, we said, this one we can pass because we're talking about mainly the financial system, quite easy. And the 10 principles is the major highlights, I think, which is very important. Like first one is trade-off, right? We would not go through this quickly, go through this detail, but this would help you understand what do you mean by the trade-offs, right? And the second issue is the indifference curves. That it generally shows the bundles of consumption that would make an individual equally happy, okay? And at the point that each individual would consume in order to maximize his or her utility. So we see that from the PISA, we face a lot of trade-offs. And the cost of something is what you give up to get it. And for the decisions that would require comparing costs and benefits of alternatives. For example, these are the decisions, opportunity cost, right? Remember what it means to get something when you lose something. The third one is rational people will think at their margin, right? We think at their margin, right? This is means sorry. There are always people coming. Let me try. Sometimes I do not know how to. Okay. Yeah. And the rational, margin. You remember we mentioned about diamond, right? And respond. The people will respond to incentives, like incentives people's, right? We go through this. And the interaction between, the specialization trade. You can read the Adam Smith, he wrote from the Secrets of Nations. And this is first time we think about the circular flow model. That would be important because that's have introduced the importance of markets and state intervention. How does market would work for circular flow? For a lot of countries, including mainland China, they keep emphasizing what is circular flow model, which is quite important for you to understand, right? The issues from the Starbucks, that how does it circular flow was from individual, imports, outputs. This is very important for you, I think. And then the markets to organize economic activity, the government's tools, and how does it work as whole country, like productivity. And this is inflation, right? Inflation problems. And the society will face a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment if the economic, depression comes. In the short run and in the long run, and the law of supply and demand, most important, the golden rules for the economics, right? And then the loss of this. I think everyone would be familiar with this. And second one is introduced by the Dr. Jin Ju from the actually another lecture. So this I will not go through too much, but you can briefly browse the line. We introduce what is housing finance from definitions. And then we introduce how by the market forces would housing finance would be intervened. We have introduced the primary source of financing, and we have introduced the merits and demerits of holding housing asset. And also the housing finance in the private sector that is affected by state, right? Physical and monetary policies, etc. And then, so we would now try to go to, if you're already there, so let's go to the third one. How housing finance, this one lecture would be important for you to try to pay some time for revision and review, because this one have introduced state intervention in housing. Like this is the general outline. We have introduced why the state intervention is important, and what is equity and economic efficiency, and what is market failure. To what extent is state intervention has a limitation? What is public good? And finally is a summary. So this one, and from economic justification, how and why state intervention will become important, why it is important. So we generally study this from the, Pareto optimality, that's original from definition. And I use a lot of cases, example to show you what is economic efficiency. Well, in particular, we have defined that economic efficiency is achieved when every possible Pareto improvement is exploited. So that is how we do, and the perfect market. And then we introduce generally what is market failure, which is also important. In the majority, we have said when market fail, government intervene. So market failure is considered important, very importantly, in this period of time, when we look at efficiency or versus equity, market failure. And the major sources of market in terms of negative and positive externalities, well, and these are important. These two externalities are important because we have introduced quite a lot of externalities in cases, right? What is efficiency? What is externalities? And how does marginal externalities would, make things different? And until which conditions that we think knowledge and pollution considered in each of the cases to show that they're either negative or positive externalities, right? And then the cost. And very important, we have defined external cost, right? The marginal social cost equals to marginal external cost plus marginal private cost, okay? And then the pollution case, right? The common triality, the triality of the commons, right? Is resources, the climate change, carbon emissions are all important cases for the triality of the commons. And that's the conclusion. And then we have to really understand which approaches about the would become options of state intervention. Why state intervention is important, and to what extent do you think state intervention would have some limitations, and also why it works, why it does not work, in which condition it would not work, for examples, the limitations, the merits, etc., the advantages. And the last thing we introduced public goods. Well, this would show you how by using public housing, right, public goods. And then the property rights in land housing market is also important for your potential referees, reviews, because this is Dr. Jin Ju have introduced. But let's go through this. When we're talking about the, public housing, we have, not public housing, housing have a lot of land areas, but have shown some ambiguities among the boundaries of land. And they would have the informal settlements in the rapid urbanization, because the gap between demand for land and its provision by the public sector and the private farm sector would become quite important in the process of that. And then here he shows why it is, have a lot of the original reason why it lead to the ambiguity of land. And then from land market, from Cavill in 1993, that lead to the exclusiveness of land market, right? And then the market failure for the regulations in the land market, because they have two important reasons. First one is transaction cost and information asymmetry. And they have shown the special fixity of the land and neighborhood externalities, etc. So what can we do? There are three potential justifications for the government intervention in land and housing market, but the well and jails. So on the contrary, the World Bank would discourage over the regulation and intervention as if this would hinder the market process, etc. And there are three potential ways of the intervention: the formal actors, the capacity building, and the formalization, right, etc. And then the institutional, this one is very important. What do you mean by the new institutional economics from the definition? And what is the notion, the three ways, right? And then what do you mean by transaction cost? And the key, all the property rights, and this, what do you mean by the ambiguity of property rights from de facto and the de jure rights, right? And making the ambiguity. And institutions have differentiated in the level of formality and organizational complexity, right? And then this is from different informal ways of Ronald Coase have introduced a lot. This figure is quite important because it mainly introduced the whole process of mechanism. How does informed property market works? And Brazil was used example, but this would be potential. We can go through this quickly. And I think Dr. Jinju has also talking about the formal and informal institutions by using the small property rights housing in China. And then you can try to search for more valuable information in understanding the small property rights in China's case. And by going to the references that from, I think some of the reference can be found easily in the website. This is lecture 4. And lecture 5 is private housing finance, like approaches on housing subsidies. So this is, again, also quite important course for you to pick up. And then we start from the subsidy definition, the payment that is done by the government to the producer to cover part of the cost of the production. And also this one shows how it can the price support the works in the market for sugar beets, for example. And this one used the agriculture photo show. And then the very key and the highlighting point is subsidies housing. So what kind of subsidies would housing have introduced? And why we need the housing subsidy? And this is the key point of that. And then we introduced about the two subsidy approaches. I really think that you have time to study further from the either notes or from the lecture slides, okay? From both supply and demand side, how did you subsidize? And what are the pros and cons for both housing approaches in housing, intentional housing and economics finance? And also, what are the cases formed, either in kind or in cash, right? What are the vouchers? Does it works? And then we use this important comparison to compare the two approaches there. So I will not go too much to detail, but in cash, in kind approaches need to be studied further. And they are considered two important, approaches for you to understand housing approaches at all, right? So, and this would important when you think about that, when you look at the way about in kind and in cash, right? And this figures is quite useful to show you how do you think about that would make the difference between, the expenditures between house two approaches of that, which would lead to the efficiency or less efficient solutions, right? Why and why it is to choose, and what is price distortion, and why does it lead to market failure? Why does it lead to market inefficiency, for example? This would be important for you to study further, and we have introduced the lecture notes and see whether you got further time to look at them, okay? And then lecture 6. So for this lecture, we actually have introduced the market for space, actually the start from FDW model. For actually from lecture 6, lecture 7, lecture 8, and lecture, I think lecture 9 from here, the two by guest lectures, both of this are all relevant with housing, FDW model, which I think is very important for a potential understanding. Another issue, I think, if you could make a better, clear issues is, what do you mean by the market? When defined by the FDW model, and how does it work from revisiting the law of demand, and how and to reducing the demand for goods and price elasticity of the demand, and what is the function for demand function of housing space, and what is the adjustment of rental level? How does it change in housing demand that would affect housing rent, for example? So I introduced a video actually for you to follow. So that's my recommendation. If you have time, you can easily go to the YouTube. When I also show you, to put the FDW model, we can find that very interesting and important video to show clearly what does FDW that can cover this for, okay? But you have to comprehend what is FDW model. From this one introduce, the due market nature, and to market analysis, and why real estate economy is a system, is a kind of a system in equilibrium, and how does the assumptions work in homogeneous and tenure neutrality, etc. So between the space market, capital market, the construction, and the new additions, how does this for, FDW model work? How does it work, right? So that is how we look at, the whole buildings. If we look at the first block in capital goods, we can use that is considered as the price equals to replacement cost, and the price of using the capital goods, for example. So here we use the price of capital goods for a lot of cases. I will not go too much detail, but to revisit this, I would say that this is important for you to look at the quantity demands from two different demands that you can get out to different results or outcomes, right? Between the income of the consumer or the household, and what are the substitutes that you can consume, either one, right? Coca-Cola and Pepsi, but it will affect your decision and the options for the complements. And for the taste of the consumers, and this also show you the expectations between elasticity, right? You understand what is elasticity, right? Which is highly elasticity and highly inelastic and highly elastic, right? Any small change in price will result in a large change. That means highly elastic, right? Small make big changes, right? So for two alcoholic and non-alcoholic. So I don't want to go too much details of this. For this one, you can easily find the space market in YouTube's space allocations. You can easily introduce what do you mean by the mechanism of this, determinants of that. And then the housing historic. And this one actually also starts from the FDW models, but we look at the capital market, that from the production firms would decide how much capital would be raised and how and why competitive firms raise capitals to the point, right? And then we look at their reinvestment decisions between the benefit are divided by P. That means the income that the rental firms will earn from renting the unit of capital to production firms. And this is a cost of capital showing interest cost, depreciation cost, and capital loss. Sorry. Excuse me. Now, capital loss. So this one can give you very important hints that to what extent do you think and can you agree with that the cost of capital would be evaluated, and how do you calculate the cost of capital, for example. So this is the cost of capital. And then you're going to also quite easy for to comprehend what is the nominal cost of capital, right? The nominal cost that is also included by using the car rental company. You can get investment choices between delta PK versus PK. That's the cost of using the pi. And we're going to calculate the rental firm's profit rate. And when it's minus and more than 0 and less than 0, what does it works? And the net investment will equals. And then how does the investment functions? This one, I would suggest you try to combine with the practical cases to illustrate the mechanism between the stock market and GDP. And you're going to also apply it into the housing market for this part. How does the housing market will work for the supply and for the demand, etc. What do we mean by equilibrium price of the houses? And how does it determine the residential, investment? And how would it be determined? And what is the tax treatment of housing? And what is housing appreciation mean? Does it mean or value? Because it needs a lot of maintenance, right, in the long run. And from the annual flow to the total stock, so we would use the net change in the stock in a given period of time. And it would equals to the new construction minus losses from depreciation. And from the annual flow to the total stock. And delta S equals to C minus DS, right? From annual flow to the total stock. And how does it works from C? And what is do you mean by the adjustment of housing stock? It divided equals to C divided by S. And how do you make the depreciation of the housing? And this one also, I will try to suggest that you try to focus on this one, how to determine the equilibrium levels. If you use housing as the example, right? How to carry out the prediction by using the new, demand capitalization rate, the supply function, the depreciation ratio, etc. So that all of this will give you a profile of understanding how to make and calculate new equilibrium levels between the rent of housing space and to assess the price of housing asset and to evaluate the new construction of housing asset and the stock housing space, etc. And with this, you're going to use the increasing long-term interest rate to check what is the long-term interest rate, what is capitalization rate, what is how to calculate slope of capitalization rate, and how does the clock rise, rotate in this way, right? So I think for this lecture notes, we have actually carefully calculated all this, lectures, limitations, and FDW models here. And then we comes with housing as a set, the efficiencies in terms of set, third, and why it does have such kind of set problems by using. For this lecture, I think quite important is negative real interest rate sections. You can try to spend more time into this part and how does this one, and also section 3 part. What is the revisit for law of supply, and how to determine the price elasticity of supply, and what is the cost of production in the new construction market, and how does the level of technology would impact, and how do you calculate the appreciation about the price in the future when it is expected to increase, when the price is expected to decrease, right? These are the two specific points. And for FDW model, you can look at how between capital market and space market would depreciate and classified, between the supply function of the housing and the determinants of quality, etc. So I would suggest you try to apply the housing development data statistically to be using FDW model. That firstly can help you understand, grasp the knowledge points of the FDW model in the third blocks, but also could help you understand how to apply the cases and use the cases to illustrate the theoretical model. And that is the important way when you're going through the whole process of understanding supply and chain, curves, right? And these are the levels of capital constraints. And in terms of this, so this one for how to make judgment of efficiency of the construction market is very important. So these are the summary. First, we have to understand the relationship between housing price and supply. That you're going to use this to understand why the causal links between housing price and land supply. P equals to A plus BQ, right? This is important for you potential investigation. And then the supply curve not passing through the region Y. Firstly, the high entry cost of housing development industry. Secondly, it's dominated by the land cost, right? Thirdly, we have to really look into the discriminations in lending policy somehow in some scenarios and conditions. And for the slope of the supply curve, we have two notes. The first point is they would have the high efficiency of construction industry, and they would have the pre-sale arrangement to determine the slope of the supply curve. The references need potential. And then we go to this one first for the, the housing bubbles between the definition, causes, and examples. Before that, I think this one need to look into the determinants of the housing, price. This one is given by the guest lecturer, Dr. Huang, I think. Well, we start from the question, why we need housing valuations, and what is a personal aspect? What is, do you think there's a public policy aspect? And these are the general introduction of housing valuations, from transfer of ownership, from the general introduction of housing valuations, and the stocks, the bonds, and bank products, crispy, for example, lately. And what is the virtue real estate housing investment in matter world, and how do you look at this buildings and adequacies, etc. Well, this really introduced how would the land acquisition or the policy would affect the housing value or housing transactions. by using the different theoretical understanding and the long list and short list of the property rights and the different high housing transaction characteristics, heterogeneity, high unit value, high transaction cost, depreciation, lack of liquidity, and difference of difficulty in determining the price. And last but not least is a debt. And then here introduced the housing price and housing value between the housing. Valuation method, the full one, cost approach, income approach, sales comparison approaches, and last but not least, hedonic pricing model. These four are all very important. So I would not go too much detail, but you're going to spend some time to look into the detail, okay? And how does the example works into the sales comparison? How do you look at into the valuations? And how does the housing price is determined, right? Between the relationship of the future, you know, and what are the local economic levels by using the hedonic. This one is very classical by looking neighborhood analysis and the local economic area analysis and how to determine housing price hedonically, right? I think Dr. Huang has introduced this very detailed way. So actually the determination by using environmental have a lot of interesting examples. And there are also some other factors like special spillover and also the time on market, TOM, we have said, and also the psychological factors like the handling, the loss of vision, and anchoring effect, for example. And then the housing bubble. This one we have generally introduced in the housing financial amid this post financial crisis, and the main FDI, and then why the urbanization face up with challenges of urbanization bubble, for example. And then they look at how you know the ghost towns and bubbles formed, and why it has such kind of questions, and how does the words and you know make this different word become the bubbling economy and bubbling you know urban space, and how does this housing crisis would works by making the property and business cycle stylized commercial cycles. Like Bard's model is very effective to illustrate this. So the housing bubble is quite comprehensive. It's linked with housing global housing finance, I think, for like this forthcoming 2 lectures in private housing finance for second mortgage script. This one actually starts from the demand and private housing finance. It's very important when you look at the global housing finance systems. So I hope you understand this. What does this figure really mean? Okay, and then we introduce the securitization, and from both advantages, and we look into the differences between subprime mortgage, secondary mortgage, and refinance. And how does the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac work? And very importantly, the 3 concepts would have to be compared. Okay, and then how does it differ from the other? And does one differ from the other 2s? What are the risks? Why? And now the subprime mortgage crisis is very important because it both have theoretical implication, but also practical implication. It also triggers the future cyclical business cycles, because as long as you understand the mortgage crisis in 2018, that start from real estate market, that you would understand why the black swan starts. And does the current moment of this war, you know, would trigger another global housing finance? If yes, and how does it originate? If not, why doesn't it not? How to control that? What do you mean by black swan, and why why subprime housing crisis starts from housing bubble, right? All of this question need your careful and caring comprehensive understanding about this lecture notes. I think this needs to be enhanced, okay? So I'm going to try to give you a very brief, but although I don't think it's necessary because we have introduced this a lot, like magic courses, right? And then the borrowers from the American Dreams bubbles. Why 2008 crisis starts from 2 years ago. By comparing, so you're going to be a very good, statistical analysis. Then you can really understand the real salary growth and what is the lenders, what is mortgage-backed securities, and how does the liquidity decline, and also the default and closer, the actions of central banks, the governments, and the over liquidity of low interest, and this one also. What are the causes of subprime mortgage crisis, etc.? Okay, we introduced generally the different roles and different stakeholders played. And those two are kind of important for you to comprehend the whole systematic formation of housing bubble between housing market, financial market, and government intervention. And lastly, we introduced the consequences of housing finance and global mortgages housing crisis. And then the regional prices from that. The last one is mortgage and reverse mortgage. This one usually starts actually from the American and Chinese dreams differences, and how does the financial crisis would start from different loans, types of mortgage loans, and the China characteristics, right? And then we introduced the different actors that engage into the, the mortgages. And we introduced a fixed rate, adjusted rate mortgages, and also both advantages and disadvantages of this fixed rate and adjustable rate, and LTV term. And then we introduce the calculation of mortgages and repayment of mortgages, etc. And then this one, no need for it to calculate, but you can, when you are introduced with agent, you would comprehend what does he or she really say now by advantages of this repayment and payment. What are the credit constraints for LTV, for PTI? What is solvency, right? What is market interest rate, etc. And the rational default important matters a lot in mortgages. And lastly, I think we introduced the primary and the secondary housing market and subprime mortgage, right? And then that follows with last lectures, okay? And the kind of subprime mortgages. And lastly is the reverse mortgages for silver reverse mortgage that would happen in futures when elderly society can become very, very, very popular in the future. So that's all I think we have introduced from the beginning to the end. Now I want to leave some questions for you to raise some concerns. If you do not want to raise your concerns from the voice, you can just type in the text. Let me know what's your concerns, and do you have any question for all the lecture notes? I can give you 2 or 3 minutes to think about that. In the meantime, I can take 2 or 3 minutes, maximum 5 minutes break, and you can think about the questions. I won't go away, okay? I'll come back after 5 minutes. Okay, see you later. Thanks. Welcome back. I just received several questions. Let me try to answer you one by one, okay? Could you upload the lecture Zoom video? Of course, we can upload this, okay? Can you use iPad to see our lecture notes, or we can print them? Because we only allow two devices. So I would suggest you prepare the printed lecture notes and PPT slides or any other relevant materials from references like papers, etc., which I think that would more workable. Lockdown browser, I think, have also seek for. I'm going to answer you about lockdown browser. But generally speaking, better if you could use the printed. Open book means does not means you can search anywhere, any places. No, I do not think a website is encouraged. Would the video record this lecture be uploaded? Yes, this one will be uploaded. Open book test means only allowing to open the physical lecture notes, personal notes. Can I open the soft copies of lecture notes, or can I surf? The point is you can open the, some, but we only allow two devices, right? One is your computer. The other will look down into online. So to make it more safe, better if you could make it printed sources for lecture notes. But for the iPad issues, I would try to consult with our program leaders, and I give some reply to you afterwards. Okay, because if these things are not alerted in the university's guidelines, we cannot allow that, because we can only work along with the university's regulations. Okay. Any more questions? Some students asked anymore, right? So for this online personal notes, soft copies, I will try to let you know that these soft copies are not encouraged. Better to use printed copy, because this closed book, but you can bring along some material you think which are important. Okay. Any other questions regarding to the lecture notes or lecture slides? Any more questions? If not, I think I may leave you some time for think about how the revisions of the lecture notes and slides. For one of the missing lecture notes, I'm gonna to upload no later than next Monday. I think maybe tomorrow I will try to bring along all these copies uploaded. And any other questions? If not, I think I can give another 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe, to see with many other questions. By the way, please read my announcement on Canvas by talking about the mock test. So let's try to, when the mock test, you need to prepare your student ID. We may check some of you. Okay, we have 124 students. And make sure you would attend the May the 6th online examination in due time. And please be ready 15 minutes before that. And you can go to the students guideline for online examination and follow that regulations. Okay. We will have 3 invigilators, me and Dr. Wang Yanghu and Dr. Jinju, to look at the course. Let's say I'm going to leave around another 5 to 8 minutes. There comes a few more students there. More questions. Well, what's is there words limits or words requirement in exam? Well, there's no too much words limits because this is these kind of questions, open book format. So tentatively no limits, but if you can, I do not think you can write as like 4,000 or 3,000 because you know no much time, right? There's not enough time. Do we need to use citation in our answer? Citation. Well, in your answer, if you remember the citation, I mean the references, because this is open book, you can use it because this is. But and some students prefer to use the handwriting. If you take a photo, that is difficult, I'm afraid. So it depends on if it's on the Word, you combine and change into PDF, and you can use citations. But it's not a must. What if format of exam? All essay type on the one of the three questions section A and the one question section B. I already said this in my lecture just now. Yeah, a total, yeah, we were going to allow 2 questions in total. Yeah. Then do we need to draw a graphic? Well, graphic or photos is considered an important instrument for you to understand your theory and practical cases. So if you think it is important to draw the graphic, feel free to use that. If you think not necessary, you do have your freedom. An open book, which means I can print out all the material one. Yes, yes, and read throughout the exam. Yes, that is open book means. Yeah. Any more questions? So you will upload the exam paper before the test. Not before the test. On a mock test, we're going to upload the exam questions 10 to 15 minutes. I think 10 minutes before that. Or I'm not, let me check my announcement. Please read my announcement carefully. Yeah, the exam questions will be generally upload and to the system a few minutes, not exactly decided yet, a few minutes just before it really starts. And they will be synchronized. So you can download it and we will announce the password right after the examination starts at 6:30 p.m. Okay, we will upload, but if it's synchronous with password, you cannot, we will upload a few minutes before that, and then we'll announce the password afterwards. And you can download the answer sheet. Yes. Do we have extra time upload answer sheet? Yeah, we can allow around 10 minutes time to maximum 15 minutes for you to upload your answer script. But any time later than this would be restricted, would not be allowed. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, the final 5 minutes, see whether if you have any further questions. Oh, Professor, is handwriting allowed instead of, yes, handwriting is allowed, but it takes time. And you can, after you finish, you can take a photo and then combine, change into the PDF version and upload to the online. You understand? You have to change to PDF. We only allow PDF Word format. PDF is mostly code tools. So handwriting is allowed, but you have to take the photo and change, convert it into PDF, right? Any more issues for that? Thank you. So because we still have the mock test, if you still have some more questions, we can leave until the next week. Type or write by hand, what do you mean? I don't understand your question, sorry. Can Wang Xingchen please make it clear? What do you mean by whether to write or by hand?
We input, we type the answer in computer, or we write by the hand and take the photo and transfer the PDF.
Both choice are allowable. Both are okay. I mean, you can write on the electronic version like Word answer sheet, because you can download the answer sheet. Actually, it's together with questions. If you want to write by hand, you can prepare a few blank pages and then take a photo, then change and convert it into PDF. Do you understand?
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Then if not, I'm gonna to finish the test revision. Okay. Okay. See whether you have any more concerns. Don't worry. I think since it's open books, so as long as you are, go actually together with me all for all the lectures, and that would be very helpful. And the most important exam is only help you to grasp the knowledge of points. Is not try to, give you some challenges. You understand, right? So it's helpful approaches for you to understand the knowledge points. And the economics in housing are very important in the future. Last but not least, I would say that even that we are challenged by the very terrible COVID-19, the Omicron. And I still have to say that we finally passed through the most difficult time, and you are there and I'm here. So we are all together. And I hope in the future, the life will be easier for you and for me, for everybody, including you in from whichever regions. Okay, so I enjoy the whole lecturing time with you, although we cannot meet face to face. But I think I wish that we were together in the classroom, and I hope in the future there will be chances for the reunion. Thank you so much, and I look forward to see you next week. Okay. And for some issues, I'm going to announce in the make it clearly for the announcement. Please pay attention to your email. And another issue is, oh, by the way, I think the teaching and learning questionnaire survey is still available. So if possible, if some students still do not do that, can you please go to the TLQ questionnaire and complete your feedbacks for the lectures of this course? And your comments are very, very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And take care. And really take care. I think Hong Kong has gone through the most difficult, and I confirmed, but we finally recovered. Thank you so much all, and I looking forward to see you next week. Be ready to take your Hong Kong ID. Thanks, and bye-bye. I hope that we can have chances to meet. Or bye.